All right, Eric Prisbell joins us now. He is the bracket guy, among other things, for On3 Sports, On3 Sports, or On3.com, On3.com. You can follow him on Twitter, at Eric Prisbell. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Eric, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you guys doing?
Doing awesome. Thanks a lot. If you don't mind just walking us through your entire bracket, seed by seed, and let us know. No. You've got Gonzaga as your overall number one, as did the NCAA selection committee earlier. How solid do you think that is? They don't lose a lot of games in conference once they get into the West Coast. Do you think that the Zags almost have this locked down?
I do. I would actually term it exactly like that. They almost have this locked down. I think they're a solid number one team in the country right now, and this is their schedule remaining. They go at San Francisco tonight. San Francisco is an NCAA tournament team, but I do not expect Gonzaga to be thoroughly challenged in that one. Then they play at St. Mary's. St. Mary's always plays well against Gonzaga, but if they can get past those two, and they could win their conference tournament down in Las Vegas, which is what I expect, they're the number one seed overall in the NCAA tournament. I would not get bent out of shape about it if I'm an Auburn fan. Auburn's fantastic. I mean, when they lose, they don't lose by a lot, and they certainly don't lose often. And Auburn will almost certainly be a number one seed in the tournament and have a great chance to get back to the Final Four. And I can't say enough about the job Bruce Pearl's done at Auburn, but look, Auburn Tigers have a real chance to win the national title this year. They're fantastic, and I think what a lot of people don't talk about, the SEC is the third best conference in the country, according to a lot of the metrics. I think it's better than that. If you look at the top half of the league, it's right there with the Big 12, with the Big 10. What brings the SEC down, as we all know, is the bottom of that league. But don't hold that against the likes of Auburn, Kentucky. Arkansas is playing extremely well right now. It is a really strong league at the top. And I'll tell you what, I would not be surprised to see two SEC teams reach the Final Four. Auburn and Kentucky are the favorites there, but watch out for Arkansas, watch out for Tennessee. It's a good, strong league.
Let's stick with Auburn and Kentucky. Most people have Auburn a 1 seed. Everyone does. A lot of people have Kentucky a 2 seed. If Auburn was to lose this week in a really difficult game in Knoxville to Tennessee, and then you had a healthy Kentucky with Washington and Wheeler back in that lineup in Tampa, Kentucky beats Auburn to win the SEC championship. Do you think Kentucky goes to the 1 line and Auburn drops to the 2?
Yeah, that certainly could happen. But there's another scenario that I'm watching. If Kentucky were to beat Auburn in the SEC championship, and you get some other things to shake out around the country, I think it's not out of the question that you could have two SEC teams as number one seeds. I think just a week ago I had that in my bracket. I had Kentucky edging Kansas just because of the head-to-head matchup, and then Kentucky faltered after that. But they're right there. And, if you have some upheaval in the Big 12 tournament and Kansas goes down in the semifinals, Baylor goes down in the semifinals, who knows about Arizona, with a first-year coach, Tommy Lloyd, out in the Pac-12 conference. It's not out of the question that you could have two SEC teams as number one seeds. But the bottom line is Auburn and Kentucky could be number ones. They'll be no worse, in my view, than 2 seeds, and they'll be real poised for a strong, deep tournament run.
Eric, I'm always interested when you see an injury like Creighton's Ryan Nembhard last night. If a team loses a star player, how does that impact the seeding when you're doing your brackets? Because they've done the work, they've got the resume, but when they lose a star, that's not the same team anymore. How do you evaluate, say, a team like Creighton right now?
Yeah, exactly right. I think you hit the nail on the head that it's not the same team anymore. And you have to weigh, at least I do, and I believe most selection committees members do as well, you have to weigh the team, according to what team that they will have right now and in the conference tournament, in the NCAA tournament. And, yeah, they may have a body of work that warrants a single-digit seed or an at-large berth, whatever it may be. But what team do they have at this point? And it's certainly going to affect their performance on the court, but I also think beyond that, it's going to affect how the committee views, Creighton or any team that suffers an injury like that. We've seen it happen before in years past, and it's a shame because Creighton has been playing really well. The Big East is fascinating to me because, you look at that Providence Xavier game that went 3 overtimes last night. You had a leaky roof in the arena. It was all sort of wackiness. I don't know how to separate those teams really, but Creighton was starting to make a move, and you hate to see this right on the edge of March.
Eric Prisbell is with us. He is with On3 Sports, at Eric Prisbell on Twitter, and you can read him at on3.com. He's got his entire seedings there at on3.com. You see it right there on that Twitter site where he tweeted it out as well. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. By almost any measure, Alabama has played the toughest schedule in the nation. They've played everybody but the 96 Bulls, it seems. We said on the show yesterday, it feels like their ceiling is a 4, their basement is a 7. Is that the window you view Alabama in?
That's a great way to put it. I do think their ceiling is pretty much a 4. Basement, I might be a little bit more optimistic than you on that. But you know what? You guys have seen this team up close. And, I was thinking about it. If Alabama, when Alabama gets in the NCAA tournament, say they're a 5 seed playing a 12, I think the 12 is excited about that because the 12 knows it has a realistic chance to win. That Alabama, I'm not worried about the losses to Memphis, Davidson, Iona. Those are good teams, maybe tournament teams. But when you look at the losses to Georgia and Missouri, they're capable of laying an egg, going flat, losing, being way off with their three-point shooting and losing to almost any talented team, certainly a 12 seed. But if they were to make the Sweet 16 as a 4 or 5, and they're playing a number 1, I don't think the number 1 seed's happy about that because Alabama has a high ceiling for sure. They've beaten Gonzaga. They've gone up to Seattle and beaten the Zags. And, I took a look at that again. They made 13 three-point shots. I think they took 34. They shot well, but they didn't shoot. It wasn't absurd. It wasn't crazy. So they're certainly capable, but they're also capable of going out in the first round. So I think that generally is a good range, 4 to 7. They finish up, I believe, with South Carolina, A&M at home. Assuming they win those, and it's tough to assume that, then they get LSU, which, who knows, that could be a loss. But you're right. Minus a win against Auburn or Kentucky, in the conference tournament, I really think that they're in the 4-5 range. If they lose another, if they get another black eye in their resume, then that could drop to a 6 or perhaps even a 7.
Interesting week for Mike White in Florida. They upset Auburn and then a tough loss at home to Arkansas. A lot of people have them right there on the bubble. I don't know where you are on Florida, but do you believe they have to beat Kentucky to end the season to actually get in?
I was just thinking about that. I think ultimately, guys, they will be right on the line. They will be one of those teams where we're dissecting their resume upwards, backwards, and forwards on Selection Sunday because they're pretty much that way right now. And they finish with, at Georgia, at Vanderbilt. Those have to be wins. I mean, if those are losses, then, the Kentucky game has to be a win at that point, and you really got an uphill climb. But assuming those two are wins, if you lose against Kentucky and you do okay in the conference tournament, you're right there on the line. But the problem is, what the bubble looks like today is not what it's going to look like on Selection Sunday weekend. It's going to shrink a little bit. It always does. There's going to be bid stealers from at least a couple other conferences, 1 or 2, that are going to take at-large, take automatic bids, and that means other teams will get at-large bids that wouldn't, automatically take up those spots. Maybe in the American, if Houston goes out early and you have maybe, Wichita State, somebody wins the conference tournament and steals the automatic bid, the bubble shrinks. And that would be bad news for Florida. So the Kentucky win would certainly be a major plus on their resume. Without it, it's going to be really time to sweat it out on Selection Sunday without that Kentucky victory.
You didn't have to deal with it last night because Phil Martelli and Michigan got a good win against Rutgers. But without the head coach coaching down the stretch, is it a free pass on a loss for Michigan? Can you use that as they don't have their head coach, so I've got to evaluate that? Or do you hold them accountable, wins or losses, even without Juwan Howard?
That's a great question. I personally don't think you give them a pass on it. I mean, Phil Martelli is certainly a capable coach with a proven track record, and they need to do their part, the final now 4 games remaining for Michigan. That was a pivotal game last night for Rutgers and Michigan, I thought, because Rutgers and Michigan might have been just on the right side of the bubble at this point, but very little margin for error. And now you look at a situation where you could position Michigan a little bit ahead of Rutgers among bubble teams. The Big Ten is nasty with those top teams, and it's very hard to get victories over that group. So that was a huge win for Michigan. And I think if they could just tread water here the rest of the way, no horrible losses, but hey, you may not be able to knock off a super top Big Ten team, that might be enough. And I would say probably enough at this point to sneak into the tournament as a double-digit seed. And for Rutgers, now they got a real uphill climb because I think they got Wisconsin next at home. That almost becomes a must-win for them. They're really up against it.
All right, he is Eric Prisbell. You can follow him on Twitter there. Read him at on3.com, part of On3 Sports, as we get closer and closer to the unveil of the actual bracket. Eric, thank you for the time, man. Great talking with you.
Guys, I enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
All right, take care. Eric with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline, JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. He passes the test. He says tournament.
He does.
I always feel like I'm talking to a smarter basketball guy when they say it that way.